Good evening. I'm world-famous hockey historian Dr. Andrew Chevrier, and I'm here to tell you about a team that you have perhaps never heard of, a team that plays in your own backyard. Now, you may be fans of the Montreal Canadiens, the greatest team in the NHL, but did you know that there was another team that played in the NHL in Montreal? That team was the Montreal Maroons, and they played in the NHL from 1924 to 1938, winning 2 Stanley Cups. During that time, they were naturally the Montreal Canadiens' greatest rivals, and they had stars like Nels Old Poison Stewart, who used to battle with the Montreal Canadiens' greatest star, Howie Morenz. Now, Nels Old Poison Stewart was not only talented, he was big. At 6'1", 200 pounds, he was considered the premier power forward of the league. And he was talented. He won 2 Hart trophies as the league's most valuable player in the time that he played with the Montreal Maroons. In fact, when he retired, he had 324 goals, which was a record in the NHL. And that stood until Montreal Canadiens star Maurice "Rocket" Richard broke that record. Now, most people think that the goalie, who was the first person to wear a mask, was Jacques Plante. But that's not entirely true. Montreal Maroons goalie Clint Benedict was the first goalie to wear a mask. He wore it for a few games after Montreal Canadiens forward Howie Morenz hit him in the nose and broke his nose with a slap shot. So Benedict, he wore a mask for a few days. The mask was made of leather and there was a big bulge over the nose, but he took it off because he said it blurred his vision and he had a hard time playing goal. Now, the final thing that we can remember about the Montreal Maroons was their biggest contribution to hockey and their biggest contribution to the city of Montreal and even to the Montreal Canadiens. It is something that we associate with the Canadiens, that thing being the Montreal Forum. Now, we always think of the Montreal Forum as being the home of the Montreal Canadiens, but in fact, it was the home of the Montreal Maroons. It was built for the Maroons. At the time, the Montreal Canadiens were playing at the Westmount Arena, an older, smaller building. Now, the Montreal Canadiens, they wanted to leave the Westmount Arena. They wanted to play at the Forum, but they couldn't get out of their lease. But one day, a mysterious fire burned down the Westmount Arena. It was mysterious for a number of reasons. First of all, the Montreal Canadiens wanted to get out of that lease at the Westmount Arena, but couldn't. Second of all, somehow, none of the Montreal Canadiens' equipment was at the arena that day, so it didn't burn down with the rest of the stuff at the Westmount Arena. Well, after that, history is history, and the Montreal Canadiens moved into the Montreal Forum that they shared with the Montreal Maroons. And they shared that building until the Maroons left the NHL in 1938, only 3 years after their last Stanley Cup. Now, the Montreal Maroons were a victim of the Great Depression. No one had any money. The team didn't have any money, and they left the NHL. And they're destined to be a footnote in the history of hockey in Montreal, the greatest hockey city in the world. Thank you.